my presentation is on the anxiety epidemic of 21st century teens. So, if we take a look at the numbers, 7.1% of children between the ages 3 to 17 years old have diagnosed anxiety disorders in the US alone. This was based on a 2016 study, and 7.1% at the time equated to about 4.4 million in the United States. But that was, as you can tell, a few years ago, so the numbers are even higher now. And the median age for when kids are diagnosed with anxiety is actually just 11 years old. So, what are the primary causes of anxiety in young people? A lot of it is actually attributed to parents. A study by Psychology Today found that 7 out of the top 10 main causes of anxiety in young people is actually due to their parents. The second big one, to no surprise, is social media. And then there's a few more other 21st century pressures that our parents most likely didn't really have to deal with when they were growing up either. So let's start off with parents. Are they doing more harm than good? So going back to that study by Psychology Today, 7 out of 10 of the main causes of anxiety of young people and teens is actually due to their parents. So here's the 7. Unrealistic praise, parents getting caught up in the rat race, lack of emotional skills, parents teaching them to their kids, parents viewing themselves as protectors rather than guides, fears not being faced, parents driven by guilt and fear, and lastly, family hierarchies are out of whack. So we'll go a little bit more in depth into those. So unrealistic praise, starting with that. Basically, we've started to grow up in an era where parents are just giving their kids credit, maybe sometimes where credit isn't due. We're afraid to let our kids feel like they might not be doing the best or that they can improve. So in a way, they're almost setting their kids up for failure by always telling them that, oh, you're doing so good and things like that. And then when their kids, their expectations are set a little too high, maybe unrealistically, they're getting let down. Getting caught up in the rat race. So parents these days more than ever are so focused on being almost too involved in their kids' lives, and sometimes I think they tend to care more than actually their kids do about certain things. They're enrolling them in SAT prep classes, and they're making them do extra practices on the weekends for their sports and things like that, and they're focused so much on it so that it's taking it out of the fun for their kids. They're constantly updating their Facebook statuses, bragging about their kid and how much better it is than their neighbors, things like that. Lack of emotional skills. So in that same study, about 40% of kids felt that they lacked the proper set of emotional skills to deal with many real-world problems due to their parents either setting bad examples or really not just taking the time to teach them how to deal with certain things. Parents have started to view themselves as protectors over their kids rather than guides. They focus too much on making sure that their kids are safe and all these things and trying to make sure that they never are involved in anything dangerous or anything that really, at the end of the day, is cultivating a well-rounded person. And they get so caught up in that rather than just being there as a guide and helping their kids when they fall down rather than bubble wrapping them and everything. Fear's not being faced. So again, this kind of goes with the one above it. Parents are afraid to let their kids do things that maybe are a little out of their comfort zone, out of fear that they might get hurt or rejected or things like that. And it's sheltering their kids. And then again, it all goes back to they're not learning those emotional skills and things like that, which are really necessary things for us to succeed. Parents are driven by guilt and fear. So a lot of parents, they're so focused on they don't want to be like their parents, and then they inevitably end up parenting just like them, and then they start maybe making harsh and rash decisions that they don't want to make. But again, they're driven by that guilt and fear with their parenting style, and that can really rub off onto their kids and cause a lot of anxiety, especially when kids don't feel secure that their parents are secure. They're wondering if whether or not their parents really are sound in what they're doing, or if they're kind of just treating it as a guessing game. And lastly, family hierarchies are out of whack, which kind of goes with the one above that as well. This causes an immense amount of stress and anxiety for teens when they don't feel like they know their place in their family, possibly due to things like, again, their parents not parenting the best or them getting treated differently than their siblings, things like that. So communication is essential and key. Parents can ease their kids' anxiety by practicing open and honest communication and vice versa. So basically what this means is parents need to foster a sort of open communication with their kids. Always checking up on them, asking them how they're doing, if there's things maybe that they think they could be doing better. They should always be asking for feedback. They should, and not just for the sake of their kids, but just for the sake of teaching that as a valuable skill in life, that communication is a very essential part of any sort of relationship. And in vice versa, kids should want to communicate with their parents, and they should feel like they're comfortable telling their parents maybe when something's wrong or they don't like a certain way that they're parenting and things like that. So social media is the next huge cause of anxiety in teens. So how much is too much? So there's a direct correlation between time spent on social media and anxiety and depression in teens. This is a study that's been done thousands of times. I'm sure we've all heard it. We all know that social media is detrimental to our mental health. Now, that's not to say that a little bit of social media is bad. It's not. It's a great thing. It's a great way to meet new people, to stay in touch, to discover new passions and hobbies. But you have to know your limits. Even just 2 hours of social media a day increases anxiety and depression and suicidal thoughts, and that's found that it can increase as much as 50%. 20% of teens spend at least 3 hours a day on social media. So if we know that 20% of teens are spending at least 3 hours, and it only takes 2 to increase anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts, that's telling us that at least 20% of teens do, in fact, have an increased level of anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts. So, again, social media is a huge, huge influence on our mental health. So there are 4 main stressors of social media. Now, this is based off of a TED Talk by Bailey Parnell. So the first one is the highlight reel. Basically boils down to everyone's always putting out their best face on social media, right? They always want people to see the best side, them doing fun things, going to these beautiful places, eating the right diet, things like that. And that can be really detrimental when you start comparing your real life to their highlight reel. You sitting at home on a Saturday night and watching a movie on Netflix while you see someone else's highlight reel of them out at a club with tons of friends might start to make you feel bad about what's your reality, but what they're posting, that might be their highlight reel of something they do once every couple of months. And a key. So, number 2 is social currency. So basically we treat likes, comments, everything like that as a way of making ourselves feel good about ourselves and validation. Sometimes you might think that, oh, my post didn't get a certain amount of likes in a certain amount of time, I should delete it, it's not good enough to be on there. And we treat that as a way of validation, when really it should be about sharing fun things that you like, and it shouldn't matter how many likes it gets or how many comments or how many views. It should be a way to document things in your life that you like and fun times with friends and things like that. Number 3 is FOMO, or the fear of missing out. So social media is so detrimental because we see, maybe all these people are at a party, and then you're wondering, well, why aren't I at a party right now? Or why wasn't I invited to that party? And you start to feel bad about yourself. And that is, in my opinion, probably one of the most important ones. I know I myself have been victim of this so many times. And number 4 is online harassment. So 70% of adults even have reported that they have felt harassed online. And again, that's a hugely detrimental to mental health when you're online. Just that people can sit behind a screen, and it's so easy to harass people online and not have to face them in person. And that has become a really big problem with social media. So now, going along with those 4 stressors, there are 4 steps to social media wellness. The first one is recognizing the problem. You have to be able to sit back and say that maybe you are spending too much time on social media. Maybe you need to wean off of it. Maybe you need to get rid of a few apps. Maybe you need to set time for yourself every night when you don't have any social media in your life. Number 2 is to audit your social media diet. Basically what this means is look at what type of social media you're using, whether that's things like YouTube, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, all of these things. And then you kind of want to weed out maybe what you're not using so much and focus on what's actually really essential to your experience. Number 3 is to create that better online experience. This means doing things like maybe unfollowing those accounts that don't make you feel so good about yourself and following things that make you happy. It can be as simple as following something like an account of cute puppies and kittens just because you like it and it makes your day seem a little brighter, or follow an account that posts daily prayers. Anything like that can make you feel better. And unfollow those annoying celebrities that every time you post you just feel bad, or you think, ugh, why am I even following this account? No one said you have to. And number 4 is modeling good behavior. So just like in the real world, you should treat others how you want to be treated, and you should do the same online. You want to model good behavior in hopes that that will rub off on other people. When you start being negative online, it just opens a gateway for other people to then return that negativity. So going along with first parents and then social media, there are several other 21st century stressors that, again, our parents most likely didn't really have to deal with to the extent that teens today do. So the first is that lack of free time. So a lot of teens today are so over-involved, they take on way more than they can handle. They have jobs, they play multiple sports, they're trying to get all A's, they're doing SAT prep, ACT, all of these things. And it's really important for kids and teens to realize that they need to set themselves some time just alone, and maybe they should drop that extra sport or not go to that study session just one time, hang out with friends. It's okay to not be on a strict regimen all the time and to let go and have a little fun. That's what you should do when you're young. The next, happiness is all the rage. So again, these days we are so focused on always putting out our best face forward, and we're taught that you shouldn't be sad and you shouldn't show those emotions, and you should always just be positive and happy. And while that's true and you should try your best, it's okay to feel sad, and it's okay to have these emotions, and it's definitely okay to talk about them. And you should, especially if you're experiencing this. You need to reach out to your parents, reach out to any trusted adults, anyone like that. And the last, participation trophies aren't cutting it anymore. Basically, what this boils down to is that kids are so much focused on being the absolute best. They have to be the top of their grade. They want to be the starter on the basketball team, things like that. And they tell themselves that if they're not, then they're all of a sudden not good enough. But that's absolutely not true. And we all have different skills and things that we bring to the table. And you might not be the best in one thing, but that doesn't mean you're not the best at a multitude of others. And that's an important thing to remember. So practicing mindfulness, which is basically the practice of tuning into one's own mind, body, and surroundings, and tuning out external causes of stress. So this is a great thing to practice. Try to do it every day would be great, and this will definitely help with anxiety, depression, things like that. It's almost a meditative practice of just looking inward, focusing on yourself, and just tuning out that due date that's coming up and all these things, and just focus on you and what you're feeling and your breathing, things like that. There are plenty of great tutorials and things like that online that you can look at if you're interested in something like this, and other tips. So again, I mentioned things like tuning out social media for a while every night, or things like putting your phone on do not disturb so you're not getting those notifications constantly. I know this is something I try to do. Or even just, when you feel stressed and you have so many things to do and so many due dates coming up and all these things, make to-do lists, break it up, put everything you have to do into manageable small chunks, and then you'll feel better, because every time you finish one of those small things, you get to check it off your list, and it feels good, and it's like a validation that you're doing something and you're doing good. And then before you know it, you've checked off all the boxes and you've done everything that you need to do. And this is a really good tip and a really good way to feel accomplished and to fight that anxiety and that stress. And so all of these are the sources that I use, that I referenced. Feel free to look into any of those. I'd highly recommend watching that video. It's The Fourth Source Down by Bailey Parnell. It's a great video about social media and mental health. And that's it.